Hey everyone, it's Elo. I hope that you're doing well. This video was requested by one of you lovely subscribers, so thank you for your request. I actually have a list of notes today. I usually don't, even when I'm doing role plays, I usually don't script anything, and this isn't scripted at all, but I do have some bullet points that I wanted to make sure I remembered to talk about, and also to keep myself from getting too far off track, because whenever you're talking about something that's really emotional, it's hard to remember sometimes to not let your feelings get the best of you and come into a place where you end up talking about things that aren't really pertinent to your point. Especially if you're me, because I do tend to ramble. So the request for this video was for me to talk about my experiences separating from my family members. For anyone who doesn't know, which I think you'd have to be a brand new viewer, I have been estranged from my biological family for 3 years now, and it was not an overnight process to get me to that point. Telling people that I'm estranged from my family is not something that I tend to put out there right off the bat, because obviously people expect you to be friendly with your family. You know, they're your family. That's the whole thing that we're taught, is that family is forever and they have your best intentions in mind, and that they are, you know, the rock that's going to get you through your life. And unfortunately, that's just not true for everyone. It sounds nice, but humans are not programmed. At least if we are programmed, it's not in that way. Relationships with anyone can become sour or toxic or harmful to you. People will tell you that you should give your family another chance, or they'll assume that you are being dramatic, or that you are making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. That's everyone's gut reaction. But at the same time, we hear stories in the news all the time, or on Reddit, or just anywhere on the internet about, you know, parents who viciously beat or sexually assault or in other ways harm their children. And whose parents do you think those are if they're not someone's? You know, like, those aren't mystical parents on another planet. Those are parents on this planet who are flawed human beings like everyone else, who are making poor choices at the hands, at the cost, I guess, of their children. So I don't want anyone to think that me becoming estranged from my family is something that I wear as a badge of honor. It was an incredibly difficult decision, I guess, to make, even though I feel like I didn't really get to make the decision. And what I mean by that is that if I had my way, obviously I would want to have a family unit. I would want to be close with people who I've known for my entire life. That is something that I was raised to expect, and something that really meant a lot to me. Family is very important to me, so being estranged from them is not an easy thing. So I understand why someone might reach out and want to hear, I guess, how that happened. because especially if you're in that situation yourself, it can be really difficult to actually go through with it and be successful in getting rid of those relationships. And it can also be kind of uplifting, I guess, or helpful to hear from someone on the other side that it's going to be okay. And actually, you're probably going to feel a lot better, in fact. So, in some ways, there's always pros and cons to like every choice. So, I'm going to try not to make this like a how-to guide because that would be impossible. Everyone's family situation is different, and becoming estranged from your family, even though you eventually have to make a choice, it usually doesn't start off that way. I've never met someone who, from the day that they were born, was like, my goal in life is to get away from these people, unless they had a reason to. So that was not my goal in life. I actually tried really hard for what feels to me like all of my life, the majority of my life, at least up until this point, to make these relationships meaningful and positive, and to be a good daughter and sister. Those things meant a lot to me. So, how did I get to this point, I guess? I'm not gonna act like my relationship with my parents wasn't difficult already growing up. It was. My parents are an interesting situation because they've been dating since they were in like high school, and they're in their 60s now. They never really, they never had the opportunity to date anyone else or to really grow out of their childish ways that they learned to interact with one another. So, that being the case, although they can be very sophisticated people and they are not stupid by any means, and they are, financially well off, and they can be a real terrifying unit together, they also have intense issues that they can't seem to fix, and they might not even be able to see outside of themselves enough to know that there's a problem. So growing up in a household like mine, there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of lying, and a lot of making fun of people. Not just family members, but like in general, people. It was a very insecure environment, and as a result, there was always tension between my parents, and they would manipulate and use the children in order to play whatever games they were playing with one another. I happened to be a really easy target for that because I'm very emotional, I'm very honest, and I cared about my family. It mattered to me when I heard my mom saying that my dad was doing something horrible to her that killed me, or when I heard my dad, saying like, oh, you better wait until you're older and I tell you about the things that your mom did during this one period in our marriage. And I'm like, wow, that's horrible. To me, it was all serious, and I have 3 brothers, and they are far less burdened than I am by this situation, and I thought I understood why. But as of just a few months ago. I don't understand why, and I feel like my older brother just couldn't really give a shit less at this point. He's kind of removed himself enough, and he uses my parents for money, for support, whatever he needs. You know, sometimes if he needs them to babysit his dog, like that's something that he will hit them up for, but he doesn't have a loving relationship with them. He doesn't like call them to say how are you unless it's their birthday or like a special event. He's not very close with them, and I think that that is normal for his personality type. I don't think it's normal in general, but he is very about himself. He was the first child. I think that he has a lot of, I mean, I shouldn't probably say this, but I can because he's my brother. Like, in my opinion, he has a lot of things that he really needs to figure out inside of himself. And he just hasn't done that. And I don't know what would make him. But instead of, you know, getting therapy and trying to take a positive trajectory in his life, he has gone the other route and gotten into drugs and alcohol a lot. So I don't foresee that ending well. My two younger brothers, they're very smart. I think all of my brothers are smart. The brother who's just below me in age is intelligent and quiet, and I would say probably one of the most sensitive of the boys. He's a good person, but I think he doesn't have much of a backbone, so he doesn't like getting involved in confrontation at all. It's not worth his feelings, I guess, unless he has a reason he wants to be invested. So like if it was an issue that he was having with his girlfriend, then he's all about it. But dealing with our family, he just can't. And maybe that will change in the future, I don't know. And my youngest brother, who is of college age, he's always kind of like revered my dad, looked up to him a lot. So I think that it would take a really long time for him to wake up to the problems that are in that relationship. So the reason why I'm telling you that is because you might be curious as I'm telling this story, like, okay, well, if you were this badly affected, why are your brothers still around your parents? And I guess my bottom line answer is that it's not worth it to any of them to stand up for themselves. They have all figured out a different way to have their cake and eat it too. And I would argue that that is going to come back and bite them in the ass, but it's not my place anymore to give my input towards that. So I wish them luck. I really do care about them. So the way that this all started for me was that I started spending more time away from my family. There were incidents that happened before I spent time away from my family that were very upsetting for me. The most prominent of those incidents was my mother physically getting in the way of me going to the college that I wanted to go to and like living out my dreams. I had only applied to one college. It was Colorado State University. They had a great psychology program, and I wanted to become a therapist, and they also had a really good a cappella group, and I love singing. So in my head I had everything, you know, planned out when I was like 17. This is what I'm gonna do, this is what I'm interested in. This after being kind of told that I had to go to college. I initially really wanted to do a trade, like I wanted to cut hair, but my parents are the type that think that that is a lower job to have. And they were very insistent that we all needed to get our education, which nowadays you can see that that was kind of not maybe the best choice. But I had my plan to go to college because I was still going to make it mine, even though it was what they wanted for me. I still wanted to do it my way, in the way that made me happy, right? Like ambitious and excited. Long story short, my mother hid my admissions packet, so I didn't know that I got in until it was too late. And I contacted the school. I was trying to get everything figured out, but my parents, my mom essentially told me, like, we are not going to help you go there no matter what. So I was only 17 by the time I graduated high school. I would have had to go through like a year's worth of work to become emancipated, and then I would be 18 already. There was nothing. My hands were completely tied. I didn't have thousands of dollars to get across the country, let alone pay for tuition, even if I was to take out loans, which I also got a scholarship to go to school, so I lost that. It was just a really big shit show, and it killed me. You know, I was so confused. Why are you not letting me do this? Like, why can't I go? And she blamed me. She said that I wasn't stable or capable enough to do it. Which, first of all, what 17-year-old is like totally sure of themselves at that point? Like, it's not normal to have all of life figured out at 17. It's normal to be learning, which I was. But at the other hand of that, it's like, did you really have to blame me and make it my fault that I'm not allowed to do this, even though I clearly have the grades for it? I worked really hard for it. I got the scholarship. I, got all my teacher recommendations, and I got good grades on the SATs, or good scores, whatever. I mean, I did all of that. So it seems only fair that I should be able to make those decisions for myself. I would have just gotten a loan too if they were like, yeah, you can do it, but we're not going to pay for it. Okay, fine. Like, I qualified for a loan situation, but I was far past that deadline by the time I found my packet. That culminated into a huge fight that night, and coincidentally, my father was also mad at me. I promise this is all going somewhere. My father was also mad at me because he wanted me to sing at one of his band gigs, and I didn't want to. I had still to this day, I have awful stage fright. I've always had issues with being shy from the time I took little ballerina classes when I was like 3 years old. I wouldn't go on stage. I ran off crying immediately because I just don't like that feeling. I'm not good with that, and I was never taught how to get better at it, so I'm still that little 3-year-old terrified. I mean, absolutely terrified when I'm in front of people. So I didn't want to sing at his band thing, and he was pissed at me for that and was giving me a lot of lectures about how God has given me a gift and I need to share it or else I'm a sinner. Okay, so I have one parent who's telling me, you're not stable, you're not capable of your dreams. And then I have another parent who's telling me, God is going to look down on you because you're not doing what I say. That pretty much sums up my entire experience with my parents. Like, if you need to put it in a nutshell, that's the dynamic that I was growing up in with them constantly. So it was stressful. And that night during that fight, where both of my parents were like tag teaming me, my mother yelled at me that the only reason why my dad was supportive of me going to Colorado State was because he doesn't love me. Which obviously was probably the worst thing that I had heard up until that point. I feel like I've heard worse since then from them, if you can believe it, but that was shattering, and my dad didn't say anything. To be fair, I talked to him about this point years later, and he said that he didn't hear her say that. He would have had to be in really, really deep thought not to hear that, because she was yelling. But at the same time, knowing how much disdain he has for her, I feel like it's completely possible that he wasn't listening. But I really don't know, and I never will know. And I'm okay with that at this point. If my dad doesn't love me, I mean, it's not going to make a difference now, in retrospect, to the way that I grew up. It happened already, so there's no point in really worrying about it. But all of that was just too much, and I left home at 17. I didn't have any clothes. I took my car, which wasn't even really mine, it was technically theirs. It was a generous gift that they got for me, and it wasn't like a super nice car, but it got me from point A to B. So I took my car, I said goodbye to my little brothers, I told them I love you and this has nothing to do with you, because at the time I thought that they would care, but they didn't. And I dramatically, I guess, left home and really haven't been back to live there since. I've been back there for short periods of time and like family dinners and stuff back when I was still speaking with them, but haven't gone back to live. And it was hard, I learned a lot being on my own. And part of what I learned, coming full circle, is in spending more time away from them, starting then when I was 17, and really, really growing when I was 20. I think I moved to Virginia for 4 years, so I had no constant contact with them at all. I didn't have to deal with their stuff unless I was talking to my mom on the phone, but it was relatively, I don't know, it was just easier to feel very removed from it in the moment. However, this time away also made me realize that I obsessed over their relationship all the time. Like, I thought about my parents and their fucked up everything so often. Like, for people who weren't even living in the same state that I was living in, it was amazing how much they affected me. And that was something that started turning the wheels in my head. Like, why am I like this? Why am I obsessing over my parents who aren't even here? What is the deal with this, And at the same time, I was in a relationship with a nice guy who had a nice family, and his parents were very loving and supporting. His mom especially just absolutely adored him. So I got to see firsthand what it was like to be at their house and at their family dinners, and I got to see how a mother interacted with her son. And that was very, I don't know, it was very eye-opening, for lack of a better way to put it, for me. I realized that there was a lot different between my family and his family. And I kind of started putting things together in my head, and since I was thinking about all of this so much, I was really reflecting a lot on things that had happened in the past and trying to start making sense of them. But I still didn't realize how much I was being manipulated, especially by my mom. I was always on her side. One of the things that my parents do is divide the children into teams. They try to win your affection so that you will be on their side and pitted against the other parent, because their goal is to make the other parent feel bad. So I was team mom permanently, probably after like middle school, because my dad and I we had personality clashes. He didn't really know how to get to know me or how to talk to me. He didn't really seem to have time for me. And when we did spend time together, it was mainly to do homework. And we argued, like we just clashed a lot about things. And he didn't like the fact that I was very defiant because I had my own mind and my own thoughts. That bothered him a lot. He wanted all of us to be subservient to him. And I hated that. So from very early on, I just had a bad feeling towards him. And even though we had good moments, now and then from there on out, in my heart, I thought my mom was the victim. So if you're in a situation with your own family dynamics that are manipulative and you're not really sure, even if you just really hate one of your parents, it's a good idea to guard yourself and prepare for the idea that the parent that you like might not have told you the truth about everything and might have played certain things up to make you feel bad for them. Now, don't get me wrong, some parents are just complete shitheads. I'm not saying they're not, but there's also the possibility that you're still being manipulated by the parent that you think is holier than thou. And I didn't realize that. But in spending all this time away from my family and seeing other families interact over the course of a bunch of years, I realized a lot of things that I don't like about myself, or that I didn't like about myself. And when I started looking at those things, I realized that they were all direct habits, I guess, that came from one of my parents. Not just me mimicking things that they do, but thinking in my head mean things about myself and others in their voice. Like, I never really realized that my inner monologue was my mom or my dad. But over time, I did come to realize, like, all of the things that I pick on myself about, all of the self-esteem and insecurity issues that I have, all of the anger problems that I might come across, or control issues too, they're all in my head because of things I've heard my parents say. So that was a huge eye-opener for me and just made me feel like, okay, who am I then? It was very concerning to suddenly feel like I had no personage, like I wasn't a unique individual. I was just a conglomerate of two people who I didn't really like that much. I realized that I was very defensive a lot of the time. I would see someone who I thought was pretty, and immediately in my head I would find something to pick on her about. And this is a tactic that is huge in my family's household, in their household. You know, you see someone and you make fun of them because it makes you feel better and more superior. So you constantly exclude people from your life because you can't fathom being nice to them, because that would put you in too vulnerable of a position. So seeing things like that, for example, in myself, made me think, like, wow, I learned all these things from my parents, like maybe I don't really like them. Do I agree with them? Not really. Like, I didn't agree with their politics. I didn't agree with their religion. I didn't agree with the way that they treated people, their moral stances, if they even have any. I didn't agree with a lot of who they are. And I realized that as I was spending more time away from them. So distance is kind of like ingredient one, I feel like, towards estranging yourself and really towards finding yourself and becoming a more confident human being and someone that likes themselves and isn't constantly scared of something, whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, manipulation, anything, whatever has seared itself into your soul. Those things can go away, but it does take time and it definitely takes distance. Another thing that was really helpful for me was the fact that I was in therapy for a really long time. I know people have mixed opinions or feelings about therapy. However, in my opinion, it's essentially school for emotions. It's a place where you can go and learn all the things that your parents were likely too busy or too uneducated to teach you. A lot of the lessons that I learned growing up that felt really meaningful, I learned from Carl Winslow on Family Matters and Uncle Phil on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The speeches that these fictitious parents give their fictitious kids, they're scripted, obviously, so they use their words carefully and they teach you good, solid, moral, happy things that you want your parents to say to you. But parents are just human beings and they often don't know what to say. They often get tired or angry or frustrated. They have their own stuff going on. They can't be a TV parent. They can't be a movie mom or a movie dad because that's not reality. However, I do think as a parent, you can put some effort into those things and you can do your best. At least if you don't do the right thing in the moment, you can go back and fix it in a way, Admitting that you're wrong is one thing that my parents cannot do. Going back and telling your child, like, hey, I didn't say that right, or, I messed up, and here's what I really want you to know. Even if you had to read a book before you can go back and say it, it's so valuable because your children really do understand what's going on way more than you think. And even if they don't totally get it, they feel it. Kids are very emotionally aware. They're in tune with nature, they're in tune with feelings, and the more sensitive they are, the more true that is. So for me, someone high sensitivity, having these things happen throughout my life, I knew that my parents were not like those parents, but I still gave them the benefit of the doubt because they're my parents, right? So in therapy, I initially got into therapy because I was incredibly depressed and suicidal, and I was 14 at the time. Things were not going well for me. I ended up switching schools, which was something I did multiple times in my life, due to suicidal thoughts based on being bullied and stuff. You're not set up for a good social life when you're insecure and shy and sensitive and an easy target, So I did have a hard time. I got into therapy young. I started learning what my emotions were, how I felt. I started learning that I didn't have to be a victim. I started understanding what that even meant, because most kids don't. But I did know that my mom told me that all the time, that I was playing the victim, and I had no fucking idea what she meant. However, it takes one to know one, because she ended up being the biggest victim and bully that I've ever met in my life, hands down to this day. So you don't come to those realizations on your own if you've never had the education to understand what the hell is happening. So that's why I'm a huge advocate of therapy. It's not just sitting on a couch and, having someone listen to you while you cry. It's learning. It's an active process of understanding who you are, why you are the way that you are, and what you can do to be the person you want to be. I feel like very few people are exactly who they want to be in every single dimension. I mean, that's unrealistic. So therapy was also helpful in me starting to recognize more and more of what was wrong in my family dynamic. So there's spending time away, and there's therapy, and there's realizing things I don't like about myself. Another thing would be the big events that have happened over my life that really stuck with me. When I lived in Virginia, I got really, really sick. I was taking a medicine for my depression and anxiety, and my doctor kind of accidentally messed up in transitioning me from one medicine to the other, and I ended up in the hospital. I was having these little brain seizures. I couldn't walk. Okay, it was really serious. I was scared. I was terrified that I was gonna die, or I don't know. I was just scared. What if I'm never normal again? My version of normal anyway. And I called my mom and I begged her to come visit me. I needed her. And she wouldn't do it. And she said that my dad wouldn't let her come alone, and that he didn't have time to take off of work. So that was one moment where I felt very clearly that I was not a priority to my mother, and that she would not be there the way that I've been taught that your mother will be there for you. And same with my dad. It wasn't even a question for him, The last time I celebrated my birthday with my family, it was on a Sunday, and my dad decided that he had to go into work that day. Didn't want to come to my birthday day events because he randomly just had to go into work, which I knew was a load of crap. That was a decision. You can take a Sunday off for your child. So they visited me one time in 4 years, and I don't know that I've ever said this, but my parents are fairly well off. They both grew up very poor, but my mom helped my dad go through a PhD program, and he's a doctor now, and he does well for himself. They are not poor anymore. They had money to come visit me. I did not have money to come visit them, but I still did. They bought me plane tickets multiple times that I came to see them, but they were never willing to make the effort back. And that's something that I mimicked in my romantic relationships too. I'm always the one who's giving and not getting back, and I feel like that's normal. Things like that are things that I have realized over time, but would have never been able to tell you 10 years ago. So it is a slow process, all of this. So there was not visiting me even when I was sick and having seizures in my brain. There was the college incident that I already talked about. there was turning away all of my dreams, even hairstyling. Another thing that happened for me a lot was that my parents never got invested in my friends. Every time I had a friend who liked me and I genuinely got along with, there was always some reason why they weren't accepted or approved of, especially by my mom. My dad just didn't even care, as far as I can tell. I don't know that he could tell you one kid's name that I grew up with, that I was friends with. And my mom always came up with some sort of shitty thing to say about my friends, or she would consistently mispronounce their names when talking to me about them, even though I knew them for years. She'd heard me say their name for fucking ever, and yet she would still mispronounce it intentionally whenever she was talking about them, just to make them seem a little less, oh, they're not really that great. They're not worth my time enough for me to pronounce their name correctly. Even in my romantic relationships, my boyfriends, she would always pick on them about something. Like the person I dated in Virginia, he didn't have the nicest teeth. Did that matter to me? No. But my mom actually had the balls to make fun of his teeth to me, and that was so hurtful. Like, you're talking crap about someone I really love and someone who really loves me and cares about me. Why would you not want to encourage the relationships that your child has that are good? And now, years later, I don't really have any lasting friendships. I don't really have a whole lot of social connection, and I feel pretty damn certain that a lot of that has to do with these characteristics of my upbringing and just always acting like the people who I made friends with weren't good enough or weren't, I don't know, worth my time, when really I think my mom just felt threatened because I liked them. They would also disrespect my wishes a lot, and I know that as a child your parents are supposed to have ultimate say, and I'm fine with that. But when I got older and I was in my 20s and I was working, well, I started working when I was 16, but when I was working more full-time and supporting myself more and everything, they still treated me like I was a kid, and that really bothered me. One of the things that I said to them before I moved back from Virginia to Georgia was that I didn't want to live with them even temporarily, because I didn't want to deal with their fighting, and I didn't want them to put me in the middle of their fighting like they always do. My dad was like, oh no, we never do that. That's not going to be a problem. My mom was crying because she was like, this is what our children think of us. And I'm like, yeah, it's the reality, so what? But even then, I lived with them for just a couple of weeks until I found my apartment. And even in that short span of time, they put me in the middle of 5 different arguments, and that was the only thing that I asked for. They don't respect my boundaries at all. And finally, in the last fight that we had, my mom threw me under the bus to try to make herself look better, and I just wasn't having it. It was really a snapping point for me. All of these things had built up and built up and built up, and she was embarrassing me in front of people I care about, my entire family, my godparents, and my boyfriend, who was a new relationship at the time. And she was really making me feel small because it was making her feel better. And she was blatantly lying about things that night, just the whole situation that we were in. And I just told her, like, why are you saying that? Like, that's not even, like, I was about to call her out and say, like, I was the one who said that we should do that in the first place, and now you're trying to act like I never said that. You're making it my fault. And she didn't want to be the one with egg on her face, I guess. So instead of letting me finish my sentence, she cut me off and was like, pull yourself together, right? Through her teeth, that angry mom, threatening, savage thing that moms can do. And I just was like, you can't talk to me like that. Like, I was immediately just like, whoa, this woman really thinks that she can do me like that. Like, this woman thinks she has so much power over me that she can talk to me like I'm 6 years old and I did something heinously wrong, and think that I'm just gonna lay down and take it. And that's where she was incredibly wrong. You know, I had learned enough. I'd come far enough to respect myself more than that. So I just was like, I'm out of here. See ya. And that was 3 years ago. There was some fighting in the aftermath of that through text messages and stuff. My mom got very dramatic and emotional and all the things that she claims to hate. And at one point she sent me a text, and this is when I knew that it was like over for me. She sent me a text saying, like, you know what? We can say happy birthday and Merry Christmas to one another and be in each other's orbit, but we don't need to be a part of each other's life anymore. And I was like, what? I still wasn't even gonna like break things off at that point. I was just pissed. I needed time to like recover. But having her text me that and make it seem like she was throwing me away, because that's what she was trying to do. She was trying to intimidate me or make me sad. And so I would go running back to her like, no, mommy, that's not what I want. I want us to be friends, you know. And just for a little bit more context, my mom and I would talk on the phone every single day. We were close, okay? This isn't like we went from seeing each other once a week to not talking. This was like we had lunch together almost every day before I moved. And we were super close. And a lot of what we bonded over was all the horrible shit that she would tell me about my dad. And I was her, like, cheerleader sitting there saying, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, that's terrible, you know, and fuck him, that kind of shit. So we had a relationship that I just never thought was gonna die. You know, it seemed very stable and like it had its place in my life, and I loved my mom. I mean, I would have done anything for her. I would have taken a bullet for her 6 times over. You know, it wasn't even a question to me, because you're supposed to love your mom. With dads, the stereotype is a little different, you know. You don't have to have as good of a relationship with your dad. But as the girl with 3 brothers, it did hit me differently that my dad didn't care who I was running around with. He didn't intimidate a single one of my boyfriends. He was so worried about them liking him and getting their approval that he didn't protect me at all. Not even once. Never acted protective of me a single day in his life. And you do realize that, you know, and you wonder, Like, what's wrong with me? And why don't my parents love me the way that parents are supposed to love you? And I think that estranging yourself from your family is just the opposite of that. It's you accepting, okay, this is wrong. They don't love me the way that they are supposed to. And now I am going to make the decision for myself to remove myself from that, because they are hurting me, my mentality, my emotions, my life success. I mean, after I didn't go to college, I became a drug addict for multiple years. And I'm not just saying that I smoked weed every day. I did actual hard drugs. I tried to kill myself. I had terrible experiences, traumatic experiences. I'm about to be 30 years old and I still don't have a career, despite the fact that I was a straight A student. I graduated at the top of my class, the top 10% of my massive high school. I got scholarships. I was nominated for scholarships. I was a singer that got into the all-state choir, and I was one of those gifted, children, not majorly, but I did well for myself. And when I did finally end up going to college, I had like a 3.95. I was like a 1/10 of a percentage point away from being whatever the highest one is, summa cum laude. I think I was magna cum laude, like the second one down. And that was only because I transferred schools. I had a 4.0 at my school in Virginia, but the school that I graduated from, I had already gone there. This is totally besides the point, but they counted my classes twice, so it really messed up my GPA. Point being, I wasn't a dud, I had potential, and I've been so far set back from any sort of success that I could have had, whether it was singing or being a hairdresser or anything, being a therapist, like whatever I wanted to do, it was all ruined. And I'm still struggling. I'm still incredibly poor. I've lived below the poverty line now for 8 years. So I know what it's like, to have nothing. And I'm still trying to get out of that, claw my way out of that after, so many problems that I never thought I was going to have as a human being. And look, I'm not saying that you can blame your parents or your upbringing for everything. I've acknowledged that I made decisions for myself. But the thing about family is that they're supposed to be the ones who lift you up, not the ones who tear you down. Your family are supposed to be the ones who look out for you, not the ones who throw you under the bus. Your family is supposed to make you feel good about how you look and who you are, not the ones who pick on you because you don't look like everyone else, not the ones who tell you you're fat. I still to this day have issues seeing myself. I think I'm ugly, I think I'm overweight, and I have a lot of insecurities that have directly stemmed from experiences that I've had, not just with my parents, but with my brothers too. Just the other night, I was buttering a piece of toast that I was making at like 10:30 at night because I was hungry, and my boyfriend was watching me, and he laughed, but he was actually laughing at something I said. And I was so caught up in my own head, being insecure about buttering my toast, that I was like, don't watch me, why are you making fun of me? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, are you laughing at how much butter and jelly I'm putting on my toast? And he was like, no, I was laughing at what you said. And like, I literally had to calm myself down from that, because in the past, my brothers have been like, oh, okay, you know, like, Jesus, do you have enough butter on that toast? Things that are like derogatory because I was overweight. Those things really stick with you, and it's your family who's supposed to be there for you, not the ones that are making those horrible memories in your life. So my point in saying all of that is that when we estrange ourselves from our toxic family members, we feel like we're doing something bad. It feels morally wrong and just life breaking, social order breaking to make that decision. And that will make you feel like you're a bad guy and like you are the one with the problem. So it becomes very easy to trap yourself psychologically in thinking, oh no, I'm doing something wrong. Nature tells me this is wrong. Socially, I am told that this is wrong. And people are going to look down on me for doing this. People won't understand. People won't accept that this is real. And people will pressure me into just forgiving them, or, you know, you only have one family, that kind of thing. Yeah, I do, and mine sucks. Sorry, like, that's just the breaks of it. They're shitty people. I don't agree with them. I don't like the things that they stand for. I don't like the way that they treat other people. I don't like the fact that there are so many things on my body that I'm still insecure about just because my mom or my brother said something to me to make fun of me. And that's not the kind of person I want to be. If that makes me a bad person to you, then fine. I don't care. I know in my heart who I am. And I know that I'm a good person. And I know that me making this decision is me fighting to be a good person and to have happiness in my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. It might feel bad because of these social constructs, you know, but you have to do what's right for you. Your family isn't going to be there forever, even if you love them. You know, people die. People move away. People get married and have all kinds of crazy things happen in their life. You're not going to be attached to the hip to your family for your whole life, no matter what. So if they are making you feel worse than you need to feel as a human being, they're failing you. And that's not your fault. There's nothing defective about you. There's nothing wrong with you. That's on them. And you don't need to let anyone else make that judgment call for you. You're the one who's dealing with it. You're the one who sees it. And even if your whole family disagrees with how you feel. You know, I have 5 people against me, okay? That's not easy. Even if they all think I'm the problem, they should be willing, as my family members, to accept me and the fact that this is how I feel. It doesn't matter if they agree. If families are supposed to treat each other that way, this great moral way where everyone's hunky-dory with everyone, then they should care that I feel this way. They shouldn't want to make me feel that way. But a lot of the times these people who have these traits, they don't have what it takes to look at themselves in the mirror and realize that maybe they are the problem. You're good because you're thinking to yourself, I'm the problem. That's of strength to have. That lets you know that it's not about who's the problem to you. It's about fixing it. It's about caring about the other people. You know, you don't mind if you are the problem. You just want to fix it. And sometimes you just can't. And you have to make that decision for yourself when you recognize it. And you will. If you have that gut feeling that you're not being treated right, and if you've done what you can to try and fix it, it's time to move on. There's nothing else to do. And to add a little bit to that, you don't have to try to fix it. I tried to fix it because I was naive enough to think that I could reason with these people and show them what they were doing, in a sense. And that's not true. At the same time, if you're being physically abused or sexually abused, or if your family member is a drug addict or an alcoholic, or if they are constantly trying to drain you of your money, you don't have to try to fix that. Don't. It's not worth it. You're only going to get more hurt, and they're going to keep being exactly that person. You are not going to change them. People don't change because of other people. People change because of themselves. Period. If those things are happening to you, you don't need anyone's approval, but I'll give it to you anyway. Get out. Leave. Just leave. You're not going to make it better. And I know that that's hard to accept because it's like, wait, you know, these are my people. This is my tribe. These are my parents. Like, I love them. Okay, that's good. You can love them. You can die knowing that you love them. But you're not going to change them. So you're only hurting yourself and keeping yourself in a terrible situation if you stay with those conditions. That's a hard thing to accept, and it's important that you have support when you're going through that. Whether it's a supportive partner, spouse, therapist, obviously I recommend that, no matter who else you have, church group, singing group, teammates on some sports or whatever, anyone you have, friends of course, anyone you have in your life who makes you feel good about yourself, those are the people who can help you on your journey. And you know, it's important to recognize that none of them can bear the weight of all of that, but they will be there to just hang out with you, you know, and show you little by little that you can carry on just fine. And honestly, eventually you feel a lot better. I like who I am a lot more now. I still have some problems, you know, everyone does. I still have tendencies that I'm trying to change. It's taken me a long time not to talk shit about people. I'm really good at saying mean, nasty things about people in a second. I can see someone and immediately pick something out to make fun of them for, and I hate that about myself. I hate it. It makes me feel terrible because I'm always preaching, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, and you never know who people are going to be, and you need to give people a chance. And for most of my life, I didn't do that. I'm proud, though, now that I've been able to change that. I'm proud that I can look at someone who I think makes me feel vulnerable or worse about myself, and recognize that that's not their fault. That's my fault. That's going on in my head. Give them a chance, you know? And that's how you open yourself up to new experiences and new friendships. And I haven't really had the opportunity to put these skills that I've learned into practice yet, especially since we're all stuck inside right now. But I do plan to, and I actually envision myself being very successful socially for the first time in my life because I feel confident in who I am. I don't need someone else to tell me that I can do it. I know I can. And I know that I would be kind and a good listener, and that I can have fun, and I just feel capable of that. And I never would have felt that way if I was still in that toxic family dynamic that I grew up in. There is a tendency to feel like you have no support anymore, though, even if you have a lot of people around you, good people, or even just one good person helping you through the estrangement process. It's a lot to lose a parent, let alone two parents, let alone two parents and three siblings. It's easy to feel like you have no support when you do have support. But that's because we've created this thought in our head that these people were supporting us at all. And when I look back, the only way that they were really supporting me was financially, and they even used money to manipulate me. So was that worth it? No, it wasn't. I would rather be dirt poor like I am now and have a good heart than be rich and a piece of shit or snobby to every single person that I meet. That's what's real to me. That's what feels right to me. So you need to remember what feels right to you. And if you have people in your life, even if they're just friends, who continually defy what feels good to you and refuse to accommodate your wishes at all, they just don't belong in your life. And it's sad, but you know they don't belong there. It's your job at that point to detach. And, you know, maybe things will change for you in the future. I'm certain that even if my family were to try to knock on my door today, I don't want to have anything to do with them. I have no faith that they're gonna change. I have no faith that they're magically better people. And I don't want to be a part of that. It's exhausting to deal with people like that all the time. And like I said, I feel happier without all of that in my life. I've learned over time to not obsessively think about them. Anytime I catch myself wondering, thinking, hypothesizing, extrapolating, I stop myself and I force myself in that very moment to start thinking about something else, anything. And I've progressively made it to where I just never think about them anymore. And I know that might sound super callous or something, but it says a lot that proportionately, the less I've thought about them, the better I've felt and the more whole I've felt as a person. So that is something to look forward to. And I just wanted to also state a couple of situations that, in case you're on the fence about whether or not you can really, like, whether or not you deserve to detach from these people or whatever, these are all reasons that are valid to do this. Abuse, whether it's mental, physical, sexual, verbal, or emotional, or mixture. If every time you're around them, it's negative, you have negative contact with them, you leave feeling worse about yourself or feeling angry, or feeling put down. If it's very stressful and chaotic and the dynamic is overtaking your whole life, so like obsessive thinking, or it's affecting your ability to succeed at your job or in your own home life with your own spouse, etc. If the relationship or relationships are built around gossip, tactics for shooting each other down, you always feel like you have to justify yourself, or there's a lot of verbal warfare. Those are all trash characteristics in a relationship. And then, of course, money and drugs, which I already touched on. And then also, if the relationship is all about the other person. That one's a little hard to just state because I know that that can be taken differently by different people, but if this person is just draining you all the time and they never seem to care at all about you and what's going on in your life, and it just seems like they're using you all of the time to talk about their life or have you help them with their life, doing chores or running their errands or whatever, that's not the way to live your life. You really do have to shift from family mentality into me mentality and realize that that's not a selfish thing to do. It's a necessity in order for you to have a life. It would be really sad for you to carry on with your toxic family members until, let's say, it's your parents, until they pass away. You could be well over halfway or around halfway into your life before that happens. Why spend 50 years at the mercy of people who are never going to make you feel better? There's not going to be closure. You're not going to get those years back. It's pointless to sacrifice who you could be for people who aren't even supporting you and who you are now. I'm only 29 and I feel like a lot of who I could have been has been stolen from me. I feel like I'm just not who I should be. I don't feel like I belong in my own life, and that is a clear outcome, I guess, of seeing when I was a kid how things could go for me, because I knew who I was in the inside, and I was happy and positive, and yes, I was shy, but I had the belief that I was good, I guess. I didn't think I was annoying. I didn't think I talked too much. I didn't think I was ugly. I didn't think there was anything wrong with my face or my body. I didn't have those insecurities constantly mounting about my intellect, my voice, my wit, my character, my humor. Everything that makes me me has been torn apart by people who I trusted more than anyone in the world. No one deserves that. And you're never going to feel good. Even once you get away from them, it's going to be difficult for you to be okay with the fact that those things happened. And it's going to take some time until you get to the point where you recognize that it's about where you go from here, not about where you've been. but it's possible, and it's much better than the alternative. So I hope to you, especially who requested this video, that this has been helpful. I'm more than willing to field any questions that anyone might have in the comments section. I do read all the comments, even if I don't always have time to reply right away. I will definitely prioritize these comments if you have any questions or if you feel like I missed something. But essentially, it's a process. It takes time, but you do know in your gut when it's a good idea to leave these relationships behind, and you just need to build a good support system, make your decision with good reasons, and write them down. Have some sort of voice memo or written list, or someone in your life who you verbally tell these reasons to, so that when you're starting to question yourself, because you will, that you can go back and remember exactly why you're doing this, because you do have reasons. No one comes to this conclusion of cutting their family out without a good reason. So I guarantee that if you're even questioning it, you probably have more than one good reason to be in that mentality. And I really hope that you just do it. It's worth it. And it allows you to start being who you are. And that feels so good. I have way more confidence and happiness in my life now than I have since I was a child. Since before I was told, that so much was wrong with me. And I feel like my relationships have benefited, and my outlook has benefited, and I'm back to feeling like I can kind of do anything with the rest of my life, that I have potential and that I have a future, in short. So I wish anyone on this journey good luck. I'm here, if you need to talk about it, I understand. And don't let anyone guilt you into thinking that you're doing something wrong. I've had multiple family members want to talk with me, not my immediate family members, but extended ones, lecture me that I need to make amends, and they don't understand. They don't know what you've been through. They're never gonna understand. They're trying to do something nice, but it's not. It's not. And you don't have to. I don't even entertain those conversations. I haven't talked to anyone. I've ignored people who have called me and left those messages because they don't have my best interest at heart either, clearly, or they at least just don't understand enough. And most of the time those people aren't going to change their perspective. They're going to want to do everything they can to discredit your feelings and your side of the story, because it doesn't fit into their box of what they think family should be. Most people are going to feel that way, and that's okay. That's fine for them, but it's not fine for you, and that's okay too. So I hope that this helped. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you for anyone who listened, and I will see you in my next video.